So yesterday we talked all about the right centre back. We came up with the Feyenoord player Luthschel Gertruide. But today, Adam, we're moving into the CDM position. Villa have Boubacar Kamara there, but unfortunately that ACL injury, God only knows when he's going to be back. Could be December, January, February, who knows? And we look forward to seeing him back when he's back because he's a top player, obviously. But who have you scouted for this particular area of the pitch for the mighty Villa?
Yeah, as you say, we've got a superb one in Kamara, and statistically, comes top of all the metrics that I think we need in that position. Ball winner, comfortable under pressure, and we know that role, he's going to take it facing his own goalkeeper under pressure and be tasked with getting the ball forward, still releasing a fullback, releasing another centre back. Um, Probably what I think we want is not a like for like. We don't. There's almost no point buying somebody who does exactly the same job, but somebody who could do it in Kamara's absence, but equally is sort of capable of being part of a pivot with him when he comes back as an option. Obviously, we've got Tielemans, who looked increasingly comfortable in one of those sort of pivot deeper roles, and Ross Barkley sort of remade a name for himself last season with Luton, doing a not dissimilar role, but something that felt new to people that have followed his career in terms of coming so much deeper to pick it up and driving and progressing with the ball. Couple of uh, second and third places, I suppose, to start with. Really interested by a guy called Maximo Perrone, who is technically a Man City player, 21-year-old, but he was on loan at Las Palmas last season. He's not been at City very long. He actually came in and went straight out on loan. I don't know. Well, it feels stupid, doesn't it? Suggest that Man City might need to move players on. Why would they ever need to move players on? But if a cheeky offer was right for a player that, let's be honest, is never getting anywhere near Rodri, is he? So I would imagine at the very least he's going back on loan next season. We haven't talked about the loan market at all. You don't. That's sort of something that comes towards the end of the window. And if it is a cover type player that we're after, maybe that might be a smart move. But 3.7 tackles and interceptions per 90 and a 90 plus pass completion rate. Really, really tidy. Plays in a sort of it seems really comfortable in our sort of style, what I would call a slow build-up player, somebody who is happy to recycle the ball under pressure, keep it, and then smart enough to move it on when that opportunity arises. And a similar, very, very similar profile player is a lad called Baloca, a Romanian at Sassuolo. Again, looking at it for very, very similar metrics, slightly higher tackle and interception rate and even higher pass completion. The reason I've probably gone for my first choice over these two is their attacking capability. So those two, I would say, if you look at the profile of CDMs, probably slightly out of our range, you've got someone like Manuel Ugarte, who we were linked with last summer. I don't know if you remember, from Sporting Lisbon, and he ended up going to PSG. That's the fella. Yeah, that's him.
Yeah.
An absolute monster statistically for winning the ball.
Yeah.
Winning the ball, and then just passing it simply. Sort of marvelous Nakamba, but then some.
Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it? You would be critical of a player that could only do one thing when it's marvelous Nakamba, but when Ugarte does it at the level he does it, you would even say like a slightly more limited Kante. Kante seemed to start like that and just add more and more to his game. I would say Ugarte's gone on to just do that exceptionally well. I would say Perrone and Balocca sort of seem to fit more that mold at the minute. They've been fantastic at winning the ball back, not to the Ugarte level, but at a very high level. But then on the ball aren't offering as much creatively, I suppose. Other names that are in the mix, but we kind of have been linked with, somebody like Onana, indeed, as a budget option. Ezekiel Palacios at Bayer Leverkusen is fantastic. I would love to bring him in, but didn't want to name a player we've actually been linked with. Probably the standout DM, I said the standout, the one that everyone seems very, very excited about, but had an indifferent performance for Portugal the other night was João Neves, who just statistically has torn it up for Benfica this season from that sort of deep lying role. But you're talking, I think they're asking 85, 90 million. Which again, I don't know who can afford that anymore. Like there's very few teams, fewer and fewer teams that can spend it, right? But the guy I am going for, and actually, if you watched yesterday, it's going to look like I'm on some sort of commission for Feyenoord, because Mats Wieffer is CDM at Feyenoord. Again, I'm sure Arne Slot will have his eye on him, bringing him through to Liverpool, as I think they could really do with him. I think he's Endo Watara with a little bit more class, dare I say. So if we compare Maximo Peroni, 3.7 tackles and interceptions, he's doing 4.6 a game. He's in the top 1% for aerials won from midfield. So again, thinking about, if you watched yesterday's episode, how much Villa have struggled physically in the air, winning headers. Mats Wieffer is one of the best in what they call the next 14 leagues. So the way FBref does its stats, the top 5 leagues, they compare the players, and then the next 14, they compare them all together. So top 1%. And then I would say what I was saying in limitations of somebody like Balocca or Peroni, the next bit, once you've won it, he's getting shot creating actions of 3.1 a game, which for comparison is significantly higher than an Onana or a Rice achieves for Everton or Arsenal. And then just eye test wise, he just seems super intelligent. He's very, very spatially aware. When we're talking about CDMs that retain the ball very cleverly, quick one pass, and then when it's on, and he seems to be very aware of when it's on, moving it in that. I think that's what's key to the way we play, and the way a lot of teams are increasingly playing is slow strike. And it takes spatial awareness and intelligence to be able to do that. And I think a lot of that does come from if not your out and out six, like your Kamara, because I don't think he is exceptional at that. It's the guy that sits alongside him that tends to do that. So Dougie Luiz often for us, but also Tielemans and Barkley, I would expect to do a lot of that next season. I think Wieffer could be both sides of the ball, a really, really exciting addition as a 6 and an 8.
I'm looking at his FBref stats there, and my goodness, yes, wow, he is very impressive. As you say,
the stats, obviously the stats can be, you've got to be very, very careful with a lot of statistics, because who are they playing week in, week out? Are they playing in a ball dominant team? What is the style of play that they're playing? I mean, I just did it myself just then. He creates more shots than Rice. Now that is obviously very, very misleading. I am not suggesting he's a better player than Rice. I'm suggesting that for somebody playing in a similar position for a team similar in the sense of top half, or more than top half, competing at the very top end of their table, he excels both in winning the ball, but then also creating something with it when the opportunity arises, which I would say Rice is also very, very good at, unless you've watched him in the last 3 England performances, obviously.
Clunkosaurus Rex, as every single England player currently looks.
I would also say Wieffer is only not at the Euros because of injury. He was in the squad and got injured out of it just before the tournament, so robbed of watching him.
They've got some major misses, the Dutch, this tournament in centre mid. De Jong as well, another one, and Koopmeiners.
Also could easily have talked about him. I think he'll go elsewhere, but a fantastic footballer, Koopmeiners.
Yeah, definitely. I do feel for the Dutch a bit, because I think they look, at times they look really good. Sometimes they don't look like they quite got it together. And I just wonder if they'd had their main midfielders in playing, main centre mids, that it might have been a very different story. And yeah, Mats Wieffer again. Yeah, as you say, 6'2". I mean, I love that. We need taller players at the Villa. We're not the tallest, the most physical, and just to that CDM role. 24 years of age. He scored 6 goals in 54 games in the league for Feyenoord. I'm just looking at here. So
Got a hell of a strike on him. He's a
yeah.
real clean ball striker. When you see somebody just seems to hit a ball slightly differently to everyone else and it stays hit, to use that Sunday League expression.
Yeah.
He's definitely got that about him. If I was going to say weaknesses, because you mentioned 6'2" and physicality, he probably the step up in strength required for the Premier League is something he'd have to address.
Right.
It's not to say he can't do it. He's not a weak player, but I think the Eredivisie puts less on you in terms of physicality. When you've got some of the physical centre midfielders that we've got in the Premier League coming up against it, that's probably what I'd look at. Of the defenders I compared him to, so Rice, Onana, Ugarte, etc., he had the lowest pass completion. You're talking percents. You're talking they're all around the 80 mark. But he was top with Rice for progressive passing. So again, pass completion, a massive factor in your completion rate is, are you trying to do stuff with it, or are you, again, I don't know, dig out former villains, but Ashley Westwooding it left to right?
Like I do on Sundays when I play for the London Lions.
Do you know what? At London Lions level, I think if you can only focus on one stat, it should be pass completion.
Yeah, that's true.
If any footballer playing Sunday League can just complete more passes than they don't, they've had a good game.
Yeah. I dread to think what our FB ref stats will be looking like. But what you mentioned, obviously he plays for the Netherlands. Talking to the Netherlands, they played Austria the other day, which was a fantastic game. Austria are an absolutely fantastic team in this tournament to watch. They look really well coached by Ralf Rangnick, and they have that kind of Red Bull culture there. The Salzburg, Leipzig, Rangnick obviously is associated with Red Bull as well, or has been. And Nicolas Seiwald, a CDM who played for Austria. I watched him closely. It was actually Sam Tyre who alerted me to him, who's been a guest on the show, just in games prior. And so I watched him a bit more closely against the Netherlands. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. His positioning was excellent on the ball. He was really, really good. But he's in that kind of Red Bull, he's at Leipzig. He was previously at Salzburg. So I do wonder if is it difficult getting players out of that Red Bull thing? Is it just where they kind of stay and, next will be Leeds, won't it? Red Bull Leeds with their new sponsorship. So maybe he'll end up there one day. But yeah, he's just a player that I maybe would recommend keeping an eye on if people aren't too aware of him. He's in the Bundesliga at Leipzig, and I thought he was fantastic for Austria the other night. And if Austria continues to go on in this tournament, as I say, keep a close eye. But Villa have also signed Enzo Barrenechea, Argentinian, played it for a full season at Frosinone. An interesting one from what I've spoken to Lorenzo Bertoni, who's the editor at Football Italia. He told me that he's a bit of a player that you don't expect him to just come in and immediately start. And just be patient with him. It's better, he's been at Juventus. He has played for Juventus, but he was, played almost every game at Frosinone last season. His stats are actually quite good defensively for Frosinone. Obviously, they got relegated, so his attacking stats probably aren't going to be great, given the fact that they weren't a great attacking side. But apparently, he's a bit of a regista. He's kind of clever. He wins tackles and then just simple passes here and there. But yeah, I do wonder whether Barrenechea will be somebody that is a bit of a project player for Emery. Will he be someone that, with Kamara injured, maybe features a lot more than he probably would have done if Kamara was fit? And who knows, maybe ends up a bit like Morgan Rogers, comes in kind of a little bit unfancied, but the head honchos have all looked at the stats and seen something underlying numbers that they think there could be a player in there. And are you kind of excited by Barrenechea arriving?
It's hard to say, isn't it? You're right. His stats are a lot more like the first two players I talked about, where he wins the ball, plays it simply. The reason I wouldn't possibly put him on a par with those two talent-wise is the ongoing pass completion. So obviously I'm looking at stats. I haven't watched Frosinone week in, week out. Purely on a FB-ref stats basis, he wins the ball very well, doesn't complete as well as the first two players I mentioned, but you are right, that is a very, very struggling side. And seeing what he can do under a slightly more comfortable situation, should we say. He's definitely got the physicality. He can win the ball. And yeah, I watched the episode where you talked about him in more detail, and they certainly seemed excited about his potential. It sounded like Frosinone have seen necessarily one side of his game, and there is another side of his game to come out. And you're right. If I'd done this exercise with Morgan Rogers last year, I wouldn't have recommended him, would I? No chance.
Yeah.
Because he wouldn't have shown up particularly well in the stats. And even if you took the eye test on somebody like Morgan Rogers, Middlesbrough fans were far from disappointed to lose him.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show the difference it makes when a player is brought in to do what they do very well in a system set up for them to do it. And of course, confidence, mentality, a bit of fortune for things to click in the right way at the right time. But yeah, I think I'm the sort of person that is always excited by an unknown and the idea that you could have something really interesting on your hands. So to have the players that we've already got in the door, I'm super excited to see all of them. And I'm sure he'll do something away at Walsall in pre-season, and I'll run away with myself thinking he's the next big thing.
Yeah, completely. I'll do it every year. Every youth player who plays for like 15 minutes, I'm like, that's it. In fact, we've got the new Lionel Messi coming in, the Solihull Messi or something. But yeah, it's I think with Barrenechea, I'm sort of fascinated to see his development at Villa. And I think there's probably some questions of, originally it was going to be Weston McKennie. That seemed to fall through. It sort of sounded like McKennie wasn't really keen on leaving Juve. So maybe there could be questions of, were Juve essentially just throwing any old player? But I'd like to think that Villa, aren't really just going to allow that, and that they will have obviously done a great deal of research on Barrenechea and figured out that there is something there, and that Emery himself will have seen it, scouted it, researched it, and figured out that there's someone he can work on there who potentially has a much higher ceiling than he currently appears to have, kind of like what Morgan Rogers had. And like I say, doesn't it show you how gifted? Not only it doesn't show, it shows you how amazing these scouting departments are, but also how gifted Unai Emery is, in the sense that you watched Morgan Rogers play against Villa for Middlesbrough in a game where he didn't particularly. It didn't catch my eye particularly, but something Emery saw in him, just raw ingredients that he thought, that's a player I want to work with. And look at what he's done. He's looked absolutely fantastic towards the end of the season. So yeah, it's exciting times.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't feel, there's part of your brain that goes, hold on, we wanted McKennie and there's a swap and what's going on here. But I feel, having looked into it a little bit, read a bit, listened to Italian football fans, that actually we've got a little bit more money for Doug in cash terms, I think, if rumours are to be believed. And then, like you say, we've got somebody who potentially has a higher ceiling than Weston McKennie, and probably comes with less baggage in terms of, I think Villa fans might have been on McKennie's back quite quickly if it didn't work. Whereas there's almost, I'm not going to say there's no expectations, because like I said, we're all the same. We get very excited based on nothing at all. But I think a young player learning his trade will get a lot more, and an unknown entity will be given a lot more time and license to come in and make mistakes, I suppose.